most of the news flow over the last 2 or 3 years. We've delineated in excess of 20 kilometers of linear strike on several of these orogenic veins. There's 4 principal veins in the central core area. You can see one of those exposed in the picture in your lower left. And the area from the 3 of spades to the 7 of spades is right at a kilometer of strike length. The area we took, the little purple sign there to the left, or purple 3-dimensional blob, that's where the first bulk sample was taken, 2016. That was a 770-ton sample, ran about 41 grams per ton. We recovered right at 1,000 ounces of gold from that. Last year, 2018 sampling was done in the pink blob area to the right of that, actually the right half of that next blob. We took about 10,000 tons. Our modeling showed it to be about 19 to 20 grams per ton. We're currently processing it. We aren't even halfway through. We're about a third of the way through, perhaps. And so we don't know exactly what that's going to rationalize out in terms of our recovery, but we are recovering good gold. And this is the source of revenue for the company at this point. Here again, it doesn't make the company profitable, but it certainly offsets a significant portion of our costs and is a distinct advantage that we hold over, I won't say every small exploration company, because there are a few, especially in Australia, that have the production model, but somewhat unique in the North American group having that revenue. And it obviously doesn't eliminate shareholder dilution, but it certainly goes a long way to keeping a top on it and keeping it under control. We will do an additional bulk sample this year to be processed next year. So you'll see continued cash flow coming from this as we move forward on Brewery Creek. We have, however, suspended our drilling program here simply because the push is on revenue. And it really boils down to, given the rough terrain, given the steeply dipping veins at 3 aces, and given the fact that we were last year able to prove the structural continuity and the mineralization to a depth of 500 meters down the vein, and it's still going. Typically, very typical for orogenic veins, they tend to persist to great depths with mineralization. However, with high grade, it's somewhat nuggety and clumpy. And what that really means is you have to drill the heck out of it. So lots and lots of drilling. It quite easily could come down to a question of the next $100 million, putting it simply. Do you want to spend it here drilling and having to raise $100 million to take this to a significant resource stage, so assuming you're successful as you continue drilling? And we have no reason to think you wouldn't be. Or would you rather see the next 100 million be in revenue coming into Brewery Creek? And I think that's a question that's pretty easily answered without any further elaboration, and that's where management's chosen to go. But this nonetheless remains a very, very viable, very first-class exploration project. One of the differences, again, is the source of that revenue, and it's our ability to process that gold ore. It's very unique in that it's almost 90% gravity gold recoverable in a plant. And we've been demonstrating 85+% with the use of no chemicals, simply gravity processing off the shelf technology from the last 100 years. And this is a local plant. This is the plant we built pretty much from scratch, and it is operating today as we speak. So it's a good asset for the company. And it's 50 tons a day, which matches operational days with a 10,000 ton a year bulk sample quite well. We take that gold, and a certain portion of it goes towards minting of coins under the Yukon Mint, which is a trademark copyright name that we own. This is an initiative Janet started to assist the First Nations. It features on one side of the coin a changing display of First Nations artwork each year. And on the obverse, there's the static image of the stampeders coming up over the White Pass Trail during the original Yukon Gold Rush. And we were quite fortunate that picture came off copyright about 3 months before the first coin. So we've adopted it as the permanent side of the coin. The first coin was design that you see here was a native drawing of a moose, which is Kedah in the Kaska language, which is also imprinted on the coin. These have been quite popular. We're doing a second one that'll be released later this year. The first one, Rob McEwen was the first purchaser of it. The next one, we have Eric Sprout that's agreed to be the first purchaser of that coin. So we'll get a good kickoff when we unveil the design and present Mr. Sprout with a coin. And it certainly benefits the local First Nations artist in terms of notoriety and getting their name and their work out in front of the public. And it is obviously a good thing for us as well, and it creates a bit of a cottage industry for the First Nations. So to sum things up, in 2019, as I say, we're going to spend virtually all of our effort in terms of expenditures on Brewery Creek. One of the things I didn't go into detail on, but part of that feasibility study will be doing bulk sampling of the heap leach pad. We start the large diameter auger drilling of that here September 1st. We'll have detailed column leach tests going on fractional sizes to determine the optimal crush. As I mentioned in the feasibility study, we know we can get 52% of the gold out with a 3/8 inch crush of the heap leach of the remaining material on there. What we don't know, however, is what our optimal crush size is. That is, we may be able to get a bit more gold out of going to a 1/4 inch crush. We may be able to get the same gold out of only going to a 1/2 inch crush, which would mean that we spend less money, less work, less money crushing it. So we need to take bulk samples of the heap and consolidate those, and then do a fractional different series of column leach tests on different crush sizes. That work will commence now and should be ready in time for that feasibility study to hit our February deadline. And it'll be a real key factor, because if we could increase that 52% or decrease our cost to get it, it'll greatly enhance the economics here, which are already quite positive. Here again, the RC drilling program is underway currently with 2 rigs. As I mentioned, we'll be doing a bit more exploration with new resources, but primarily expanding and upgrading the known resources. Commencing earthworks for the permitted heap leach expansion, which here again will be underway within the next week or two. And doing a lot of work on the roads, widening them again, putting culverts in, getting ready for production. Obviously, the completing and conducting optimization studies, a new resource study this year, to be released early next year. And one thing we will do, Janet touched on the sulfides, I did as well. There was one early study done pre-production in the 1980s when biooxidation was in its infancy that indicated it worked quite well on the sulfide ores here. And so we will do a small test of that this year just to move that along, because the sulfide potential of this project has been completely, the surface has just been scratched. In fact, most drill holes are terminated within a few tens of meters of hitting the sulfide oxidation boundary. And that could really be a game changer again. So we'll see how that goes. Certainly bio-ox advanced quite a bit in the last 40 years. As I mentioned, the 3 ACES project will do the bulk sampling. Pilot plant will continue operating, processing that bulk sample and providing revenue and gold for sale, as well as for gold of the Yukon Mint, where we'll continue the design and production of our coins featuring Yukon artists. So I think we've hopefully convinced you, or at least given you a compelling picture of how we've tied this together with a ready to go turnkey operation, essentially, at least ready to finance opportunity. We think that with our phased approach, we don't have a real number yet because of the feasibility study, but we're looking at to be something on the order of 1/3 of what the full cost of the operation is. Obviously, we're going in a phased way. We won't need all the mining equipment, so it should be considerably under that CapEx. And top of the desk looks like maybe $30 million, but here again, we won't know the real number until we do a feasibility study. But we do have, invested management, progressive ideas, certainly aligned management with shareholders, being the largest shareholders. We're very sensitive to the same issues you are. And with that, I want to thank you for joining us. We will be playing a video immediately following this of the Brewery Creek area, just so you can get a feel for the lay of the land. One thing I'd call your attention to when you see it is there's a footage along the river that's 12 kilometers from the main trend where the mining has been conducted. You'll see some big orange cliffs. This is oxide mineralization that's exposed in the riverbank that's never been sampled until this year. And there's an awful lot of it you'll be able to see. And as I say, it's never been sampled yet. And we have some high hopes for that as well. And that should be some news coming out along with lots of drilling. So thank you again, and we'll start the video now and take any questions you might have on Brewery Creek or any of the companies.
Thanks, Bill. Campbell here. So we're going to just